Hey everybody, so this is Sean Ventura with the Lights Camera Pro podcast, and I just got an Amber Alert. We are waiting for Justin Dux. His wife is on a call, so I thought I would just go live and tell you guys what the episode is about today. So Justin is a podcast host at careercloud.com. He's going to tell us about the podcast, and there's a website, and there's all kinds of stuff attached. You guys can comment and like, and we'll comment back and maybe post it. Any questions that you have about podcasts in general, feel free to post them also. So I'm just sitting here in my living room next to my dog waiting for Justin to call. But he's typing now, so we'll see if he's going to join us. I was just going to go off and start talking about how I started my podcast, which is always the backup plan, but I haven't had to do that yet. Let's see what he says. See, I don't know why I can't. Oh, I have to join. There you go. I don't know why I can't. Okay, he just said it's live, and he will join us as soon as he can. His wife is on a call, so I guess they're like me and my girlfriend. We're in a small apartment. You can't do two calls at the same time. So I will just tell you about my podcast. You can send any comments that you want. I'm going to send one right now as a test. Hey, Sean. Send. See if it comes through. We had an interview yesterday. Yes, it did. We came through with an interview yesterday with Barry Akara. She said goodbye 3 times. I'm going to write, no worries. This is what live television is, or live Skype, or live Facebook. So we had a guest yesterday who you can check out. Her name is Barry Dakara. She is the podcast host of the Mommy a Yo-Yo podcast, and she was really fun. And she talked about being an African mother from Nigeria. And that's on our Lights Camera Pro podcast Facebook page. You can check that out. And she talked about starting her podcast, and she's been doing it for a year, and now she has 5,000 downloads. So that's very cool. Congratulations to her. And then the day before, this is so hard for me to remember all these names. The day before, she was in Atlanta by way of Nigeria. And the day before, we had Manny Oso and Nikki Trends, who have a podcast called Bubble Bath Stories. And they were awesome. They were really funny. And they have drinking games when they watch Bob's Burgers. They record in their bathroom. That's why it's called Bubble Bath Stories. You can check that out on our Facebook page. And also, I feel like Ed McMahon stalling for time. This is so funny. Hi, everybody out there on Facebook. Hello. No, and then the day before, we had my great friend Tom Byers, who's a musician. He also worked at Turner with me doing video editing. And he has been in 3 different bands, including the Dysfunctionals, which he's in Atlanta doing now. So we talked with him for a minute. And then yesterday, because I'm doing video podcasts and I'm also doing audio podcasts still. So yesterday I posted Mark Kendall, who is a Atlanta comedian, writer, teacher, and he's done a one-man show at the Alliance Theater, and he teaches classes on improv, and he does stand-up comedy. Guy's got a lot going on. And we talked to him, and that's up on the Lights Camera Pro podcast, Apple Podcast page, Spotify, Google Podcasts, down the line. Here comes Justin. Let me hit yes. Hey, Justin. Can you hear me?
How are you?
Oh, there you are. Hey. How are you, man?
I'm doing well.
I felt like Ed McMahon stalling for time there. I was like telling him about some podcasts that I'd posted. It's totally cool. This is a new thing for me too. This live thing. I usually do audio podcasts. So, how are you,
You
man?
don't ha- you don't have 5 minutes of stand-up comedy worked up?
Actually, I don't have 5 minutes, but I actually went back and did stand up for the first time in 20 years. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't great. It's a little scary to get up there by yourself at open mics with the comics just reading their notes and not really paying attention. But
Yep.
I did get a few laughs. It was fun going on at 11 a.m. on a Monday night, but I kind of stopped that a couple months ago. But
Well,
how are
I
you,
had no
man?
idea you'd done comedy in the past. I've got about 7 minutes of original material
Oh,
now,
really?
and I'm a hobbyist. I only
Yeah,
been out performing 30, 40 times, but it's
right.
super fun and addictive. I'm really glad I started.
Yeah, yeah, it's so much fun, and the people are great, super supportive. Um, so let me figure this out. You are the host of the CareerCloud.com podcast, but correct me if I'm wrong. There was another host before you.
That's right.
Okay,
Chris Russell started the website and the podcast. Wow, back in like 2007 or something.
okay,
And he did almost 200, I think, maybe as many as 300 episodes before selling the company. So he
okay.
sold CareerCloud.com, and along with that came the podcast. Real quick, is my audio okay? I'm standing a little further away than I usually am.
Yeah, your audio is great. I know that mine's been a little loud, so I'm going to move my.
You're pretty good.
I'm doing this with just my webcam on my iMac because I know you can hook up. This is Ecamm Live. You can hook up all kinds of cameras, but then people have problems with skipping and freezing, and so I'm just trying this for now, and it's kind of working. And these are the
That's
best
good.
ones. I've got the big headphones and the Rode Pod mic and the whole thing, but um, this works best for the video podcast, the little Apple headphones.
It looks good. So back to your question.
Yeah.
I think actually I already answered that. I could go into more of the story of how I got involved.
Yes.
I assume
Sure.
is your next question, but
Yeah.
the this what happened was I was tooling around a marketplace where you can buy websites, and I'm not really a website investor or person even capable of making my own website, but I got curious and I was like, maybe there's a good deal here. And long story short, there wasn't. I watched it for months, almost a year, and there was two kinds of websites for sale. Really cheap ones where people literally put it together and said you can buy this website template for like $50. And
Right.
then there was this other end where they were thousands upon thousands of dollars. You could buy the whole Amazon FBA already built for you business for $150,000.
Right.
Was not uncommon. And so somewhere in the middle, it stood out to me that CareerCloud.com got listed for sale. And at the time they wanted, it was public, so I guess I don't think it would be a problem to say what they wanted for it. I mean, they wanted like 80 grand.
Right.
And that is not, the type of money I had laying around back
Right.
then.
Right. Not many people do.
Yeah, this was like 3-4 years ago when this is going down. But I spotted that little nugget of detail that they had a podcast and 200 episodes. And that got me really excited because I didn't really have interest in the website. I only had interest in the podcast. And so I reached out to the owner through that app, and then we connected, had a phone call. I only spoke to this guy twice in my life, Chris Russell, that is. And
Right.
he said, Justin, I sold a website before, not this one, made like $500,000. Now I built this one up for 3-4 years. I know that it's a good time to sell when its site is growing and things are improving. It's better than selling it when it's hurting, or struggling or whatever. And so he just had a really high confidence. And he's like, no, I don't need help selling it.
Right.
And I was trying to go in creatively with this angle of like, hey, if you let me be the host, now you're selling your podcast along with the host. The buyer doesn't have to become the host as well.
Right.
And he's like, probably not going to be an issue. Don't worry about it. And so I was kind of bummed, but I watched it for a few more months, and it did take a few more months, and the site did sell. And so then I reached out to him one last time and said, hey, can you put me in touch with the new owner? I talked to the new owner, and within one phone call, he's like, this is great, Justin. I wanted the website. I didn't really want the podcast, but I saw the value in it. To me, the podcast is just going to help me drive more traffic to the website.
Right.
And this new owner had just gotten off selling reviews.com in Seattle.
Oh,
and
wow.
So based out of Seattle. And part of the agreement of selling a website in that scenario that was very popular was he had to stay on and work that site for 2 more years. And so he knew it would be kind of a problem if he looked to be becoming the figurehead of a new acquisition, a new purchase.
Right.
And so within a week, I had a podcast microphone on my front doorstep that he had shipped out to me. And I'm like, I guess I'm a podcast host now.
Awesome. That's so awesome.
I was very surprised. Yeah.
So a couple of things. One, this is a weird thing. I got laid off from Turner after 14 years last October, and I just went right to USA Today and started freelancing. I'm a video editor, and then that kind of fizzled out a little bit, and I was I'm into podcasts. So I had actually listened to Career Cloud Radio several episodes while I was at the gym on the treadmill or walking my dog, and I knew that there was an older, an original podcast person and then a new podcast person, but I just literally connected it today, like an hour ago. Like, because, because there's so many career websites and with a similar name. So I was like, I wonder if that's the guy from that. So I actually have listened to the podcast, listened probably to you because I was listening to newer ones. And like you said, there was like 200, right, originally or something.
Over
then
200.
Then you took over.
Some were shorter. Chris, it was one thing I wish I could copy from Chris was he did a really good job of making a 15-minute episode. My first episode was like an hour and a half. Yeah, I really didn't know what I was doing.
I know. I've had some really long episodes, but that's my fault with like the guests, just letting them go. I mean, there are certain people that can just talk for hours and hours and hours if you don't stop them. There was one guy, we're an hour and a half, and I'm like, listen, I got to take off my headphones. I'm getting a headache. Like, we got to... He's like, well, I can do another one. I can do another hour and a half. And I was like, no, we're good. We're good. We have plenty of stuff to cut down.
And that's been a trick I've learned is the work of being a host and doing interview format shows is 80% of the work happens before you two get on the phone.
Yeah.
And just back and forth with their agents to try to schedule it and pick a date and then show up for that date. That's not 80%. That's probably like 40%. That's, of course, editing is the other 40%. Right. But doing the actual interview, that's the easiest part. Yeah. That's not even time consuming really. But the trick I mentioned though is to book double interviews and release them as 2 episodes. So if I think I'm going to have a really great in-depth conversation that's going to last an hour, now I tell the guest like, hey, I'm going to split this into 2 episodes. And then in the middle, it's going to be weird because I'm going to reset for a new episode. Right. And you're going to hear me do that. And then we'll just continue.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a really good idea because I've had some crazy long, I think the longest was 120, an hour, 20 minutes, but I've had some crazy long episodes. So you're a little bit different because you took over something after someone had already started it. But in a very similar way, what I'm doing with the Lights Camera Pro podcast is I'm interviewing directors, writers, actors, DPs, lighting, gaffers, grips, and I'm asking them about their careers, like how do they get into the business, and then in the end they end up with advice. So you kind of explained a little bit how you got into the business.
Hold the phone, man. I got to interrupt you right there because I got super excited when you explained to me that's your show. Because when I've been sitting in movies and watching the credits roll, as a host myself, I've been thinking like somebody's got to make a show just deep diving into some credits list somewhere and finding a person at random. Like, here's the random person from episode 1 Star Wars. Here's the random grip from Spaceballs too. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But you track them down and find them. That would be really, I think, pretty fascinating.
Yeah, well, it works a little differently. Like I have a lot of friends in the industry because I worked in advertising, I worked in movies, I worked in commercials, and now in TV for the last 14 years. But I am finding some people from Facebook friends and IMDb, and just I'm getting some actors that worked with Al Pacino and some actors who are on the Fox show 911 and stuff like that. I haven't gotten any. I've actually asked Olivia Munn and Dave Chang and Camille Najani, some of the people I really like. I've asked them on Instagram, but I haven't heard from them. But eventually I will. Once you get big enough and you have enough traffic, they'll come around.
Oh yeah, I think for a show like yours, a dream guest would be Joseph Gordon-Levitt and what he's doing with Hit Record.
Yeah.
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 So go ahead, hit me with your next question. I distracted you there.
No,
I
it's
was
fine.
excited about your show too.
So a lot of what this is my own curiosity to find out what other podcasters are doing, because I'm on the Facebook groups every day, and I've made some tutorials how to edit an audition, why I chose Libsyn. I've just made them because so many people are asking the same questions. So the question is, what is your podcast equipment? Where do you record? And what is your hosting service? We'll just start with those.
Right. So I'm going to caveat this to say that, I've done 20 episodes now, and I'm treating it professionally, but I wouldn't consider myself a professional host yet.
Right.
However, I've got the backing of careercloud.com, so you could argue that I already have staff in that sense,
right,
even though that's his money and his investment. But he, like I said, he sees the win because it's driving traffic to his investment, the site. And then, so I want the listeners of your show to take away from my comments about what I'm about to list off as, think of this as the lowest barrier to entry. Like if you're hesitating to start your own podcast,
right,
please let what I say next inspire you to go out and do this right away, because it's really great. And I have some thoughts on that.
Yeah.
First of all, the microphone's a Yeti blue. It comes in a lot of colors now. Works great. I've loved it. The school of hard knocks that I've learned is that you should probably also invest in a stand right away. I'm now at a dresser that's a really nice standing height, and I chose it because I wanted to get this nice light in here. And I know it's a little opaque because I don't have any natural light coming into this room.
Right.
Just because of the time of day here in Minnesota. But I'm literally standing like 12 inches away from a big table lamp, and I knew that would give me better lighting for you.
Okay.
Normally when I'm podcasting and there's no video component, I'm just sitting at my desk.
Right.
But that means I've got the mic on the desk, and that's not as good a sound as and I just touched the desk, which you probably heard. And whereas if I had a stand that was connected to this Yeti, then touching the desk kind of thing wouldn't be picked up as loudly as you probably just heard there. And then also this little pop filter is like $15 maybe. They're really cheap. I am so cheap that it's actually just connected to an eraser on the other end and a 5-pound weight is how I got that put up right there. And because it's got a bendy arm, I can just always get it right where I need it to be. And so I love that. And then the laptop, obviously, I have a MacBook 15-inch or something, but I got it a few years ago. It's still been working great. I use when I was editing it myself, I was using Autographics. Is that the right name? Audacity. Sorry.
Audacity. Yeah.
Yeah. I was using Audacity. I just went and checked the icon. Yeah. And that worked great as well. About a 20-minute YouTube video on Audacity got me going. I learned 2 features of Audacity. That's all I understand for normalization and noise reduction, which I barely use that feature. And then another editor like yourself was recently just teaching me I should look into compression as well.
Okay.
As a feature of Audacity. But that's a free tool.
Right.
I'm worried about upgrading my MacBook right now, literally the next update of iTunes, because I've heard rumor that Audacity might stop working if I update to the newest release.
Yeah, I've been doing this stuff for 25 years. It's been video, not audio, but I also edit my own audio. And I've been doing Premiere for 10 or 12. And I would say, yeah, I never upgrade. Anytime you upgrade, you have chances of problems. So I just wait until they're like, okay, dude, we're going to shut you down unless you upgrade. Like, nothing's going to work unless you upgrade.
Well, I'm worried about losing my old episodes that are kind of still saved in draft mode or something through Audacity. If those old files break, I'll kind of be really sad. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me just tell you and the viewers, since this is an interesting conversation that's more technical, um, is that I use Adobe Audition, and I have it with Creative Cloud, which is $20 a month if you have a student, if you're a college student, or if I have two daughters who are in high school and a son, and I can get it through that. So it's $20 instead of $50 a month. Now, the thing that's great about it is that when you have a buzzing sound, which I've had from myself or guests, because I do everything remotely, they have this noise print feature that will select the sound and remove it from the entire podcast. And I know that's a problem that a lot of people run into. They're talking about computer fans, especially with this Ecamm Live, but they're also talking about just fans in their house because they're hot. And
AC,
they need and the bzzz of the AC. You can literally select like 2 seconds in and out, and then there's a tutorial I have online that does it, and then it removes it from the entire podcast. So it's really, really nice, and it doesn't change the dialogue at all.
That's huge, and that's been a big frustration as a novice podcaster. I had one episode about 10 minutes get ruined by the mic rubbing up against like a fuzzy sweater.
Yeah.
And that was a lesson for me on that one.
That is a little bit trickier because it's over the dialogue. You kind of have to find in between the dialogue a quiet space that has the hum in it. But you can go in and cut around the words to get that out, but that's a little trickier. The other thing that I would mention is that this is so dorky. I had a crappy mic arm for $20. I went out and bought the Rode, and I absolutely love this thing, that it just comes across and it's right in front of your mouth, and it just clamps on the table. It's $99, and I absolutely love this mic. It's a Rode pod mic. It's only $99, and it's
not bad.
Yeah,
I thought when you demonstrated that, I thought that was going to be $250 starting.
Yeah, they do have more expensive ones, but this is the pod mic for podcasts. $99, has a pop filter in it.
I'm noticing you touch it right now and it's not popping.
Yeah, it's not popping. It has a pop filter in it, and I'm using these, but it has a pop filter in it, and it also has a shock absorber in it to not, when it moves like that, not to pick up any sound.
That's awesome.
Really dorky. And then I have a Behringer UMC 2020 that I go into, so I can go USB to my iMac. But the other thing, before I forget, that and give me like a 10 minutes before you have to go, notice, so I can ask you advice at the end. But the other thing that I have to tell you that is really cool, and this comes from Premiere and Adobe, in Audition, you can consolidate your episodes and archive them. So it's literally just taking your sequence, and it will save every file connected to your sequence into a separate folder. And so you're essentially backing it up. And audio is very small, right? So I'm getting like these 100 meg files, 50 meg files total for everything. And it just brings it into a folder, and then you can take that to a drive. Because you were talking about losing episodes, and then I just can go anywhere in the world, open that up, and edit the sequence, if that makes sense.
That's a technique a little more advanced than I've been doing, because I generally work off one, maybe 3 audio files at a time. 3 being when I brought in like an ad break or an announcement I put in after. But when you're starting to get into even more files that are breaking apart and stuff.
Yeah.
And that sounds valuable too, because one of the ideas I've had for my show with such a deep archive is to start like a recurring segment of a deep cut, and bring in like 2 minutes of something from 4 years ago, or 5 years ago. And also, I'll just bring it up now because I know the purpose is to talk about podcasts, but another idea that I think is really hot right now is TikTok. And TikTok has 1 minute limits on their videos But I'm thinking that if I can figure out the missing piece is moving my audio from my computer over to a mobile app like TikTok, and TikTok doesn't really have a desktop experience yet. They're probably working on it, but they don't care because they're really putting all their engineers on their mobile.
Right.
But there are ways to do it. Move the audio file to your phone and then load it as a narration or a voiceover to whatever video you made on your phone. I want to get 1-minute clips out of my archives and then promote them on TikTok. And TikTok then uses their AI algorithm to distribute them to their 80 million viewers. That's just the U.S. count, by the way. If your audience is international, they'll be even further. But lot of opportunity there to pick up some traffic.
Yeah, and that's what I've heard. There's this woman, Mayan Gordon, on LinkedIn, and she has 750 million TikTok viewers because she used to do glass blowing and got a lot of traffic from that, but now she has her own media business and she's always on LinkedIn. I haven't ventured there. I do Instagram, Facebook, and I actually have improved my traffic a lot by doing the social media and actually by putting it on my own personal Facebook page. And these things are great. I mean, anything that's live goes to the top of Instagram, goes to the top of Facebook, goes to the top of YouTube. And I'm experimenting. So I'm trying Facebook Live, I'm trying YouTube Live, eventually we'll try Instagram Live, just to get more traffic. But, this is going to come up in the end also. But, it really isn't about the money. It really isn't about the traffic. I love doing this. I love meeting new people, having conversations. Right now I'm doing it every day because my freelance hasn't picked up. So it's podcasts are great, and they will enhance your life so much in so many different ways that you can't even explain it.
Well, I want to comment on that because there are a couple ways that I've noticed it changed for me too. So with 40 million people unemployed, and obviously the fact that my show is about career advice, it makes sense that I would connect these two dots together. But when I think about professional networking for your industry or your job, whoever's it is, if you're an accountant, if you're a web analyst, if you're a marketer, I don't care. Within your industry is the only tribe you need to find, your 1,000 people that know who you are, right? But a podcast is such a great way to explode that network, because when my day job is in Salesforce administration. I have a day job. I don't get paid for my podcast. I just do it because I like it.
Right.
But it takes a lot of time. So, someday I would like to get paid.
Right.
But when I think about, the average business conference where I might meet other Salesforce administrators, when I say I'm another Salesforce admin, when I'm meeting people, that's the end of that. We're all like,
exactly.
But like when I say, I host the podcast Career Cloud Radio, eyes light up.
Yeah.
The 3 people want to come over and join this.
What do you do? What is it about?
And it happens with friends. It happens with family. Everyone. Yeah. There's a follow-up question natural to saying that you host a podcast that is great to kickstart a conversation.
Yeah.
And so when I think about those unemployed, my advice to them would be to start a podcast where you're sheltering in place. Pick any topic, and I literally mean that, any topic. It's got to be something you care about, otherwise you won't do it. Or if it's for professional reasons, at least choose your day job. I don't care if you're a Starbucks barista, even that podcast would be interesting because I am desperate for a good latte right now.
Yeah.
and like, just start it. Do 8 episodes. It's all it takes. But I guarantee the day it'll be worth money to you is the day you sit back down and do a job interview and you say, this is what I did with my time at home. You are now immediately set apart from the other 1,000 candidates that did nothing with their time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You see what I mean?
I totally agree, man. I totally agree. And for me,
your audio broke up there for a second. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we just had a little internet lag.
Yeah, sure. This is actually crystal clear compared to my other 3. One person had to call me back and everything just froze on her end, but she was using her phone. So are you using your phone or your computer?
Computer.
Okay. I think it just everything works better with the computer. And then when you start adding all these cameras and all these mics, and it just gets crazy. It's too much lag. Um, but I did you say something before about 40 million views or downloads or something for your
No,
podcast?
40 million unemployed
Okay.
in the U.S. Yeah.
So can you talk numbers with your website, or
So
are you
this
not
has been
allowed
a
to?
challenge. This has been a challenge with being a new host, is because we were on a provider, Hipcast, up until about last month.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 years while I've been with them, and then the whole time before. Hipcast seems to be a smaller hosting provider.
Right.
Support would be 2-3 days at a time when you submit a support ticket. I didn't see the website experience when you log in change in that time very drastically.
Right.
So the user interface and stuff like that. And so that was just kind of leading me to believe that maybe I don't want to be sticking with Hipcast long term. And then the most important thing, the analytics. And the owners were constantly asking me, like, who's listening, how many listens, that kind of thing. And I'd show them these 2 charts that Hipcast had, and that was it. I didn't have any other analytics.
Right.
So I really started to question, am I even getting real numbers? Because I don't know the difference between a subscribe, listen, and an actual listen or download. Download to listen versus their subscription is what's pinged the server to count it, right?
Right.
And so we ended up choosing Libsyn as well, by the way.
Okay.
And that's what we've moved to. And I'm hoping for better analytics. Unfortunately, now the owners are the ones logging into that, not me.
Okay.
So what I've heard is there was probably a significant drop. We went from Hipcast telling us that we had 5,000 to 6,000 listens per new episode for the first 45 days to Libsyn saying we might be only closer to 1,000.
Okay.
Yes, that hurts your ego at first.
Yeah.
But then again, I've talked to Scott Anthony Barlow, hosts Happen to Your Career, and he gave me some good pro advice because he's been doing it longer than me. And he's like, Justin, honestly, I kind of stopped looking at those numbers now. I remember in the beginning, they fed my ego, and I felt really good about those numbers. But really, I have to just make the show that I think the listeners need to hear and put out the good content and trust that who needs to hear it is finding it.
Right.
And I took that with a grain of salt because it's really easy to go back to those conferences I was just talking to you about. I was like, I got 6,000 listeners.
Right.
Nobody cares again. It's just you being proud,
Right. So this is really interesting. I did a lot of research on this because I do have the Libsyn analytics. And I'll be honest, man, I've been doing this for less than 2 months. I've got 725 total downloads. Obviously just starting, but a lot of my traffic is from Facebook, and it's from people I know and people I don't know that I'm connecting to. Very little traffic from other places, but Apple is about 70% of the downloads is from what I read. And the way that you can tell, because everybody's going on websites saying I have 100,000 downloads a month, and what they're trying to do is drum up traffic and have more people go to their site because they're like, wow, 100,000 downloads, this must be good. But the truth is the one analytic that everyone can look at to see what kind of range of downloads and what kind of is that if you go to Apple and how many reviews? Reviews or likes, one or the other. Like if you have at your Apple podcast page, you have like 5,000-6,000 likes or 5,000-6,000 reviews, whatever it is. One or the other, I can't remember what it is, but that will tell you that you're in a certain range of 500 a day or whatever it is. So if someone says they have 100,000 downloads and they have 98 likes at Apple Podcasts, it's completely not true. It's not even in the same.
And I've heard the same thing when I used to sell on eBay. Like you can look at the rank of a seller and see if they've got 100 reviews, to your point, and you can pretty much multiply it by 10 because every 10th order somebody might actually take the extra effort of reviewing you. And like that's probably similar with podcasts. For every 1,000 listeners, you probably are getting one person to finally write a review for you.
Right. So the only thing I would say, because you're a much more established podcast and it's been around for there were 200 episodes before you or something.
Yeah.
And the questions would be a little different for you. Like, I know the money is going to the company, but is there are there people, are there email lists that people are signing up for? Is there Patreon? Is there Ko-fi? Is there, like, what kind of, besides just traffic, are the sponsors do you have? Do you have affiliate partners? Do you have, like, on the
Right.
top
I
of your
gotcha. I
episode,
gotcha.
3 minutes of ads?
This is really interesting. Like, the owners of careercloud.com have been nice enough, and I'm still amazed by this every day, to say, Justin, the podcast is treat it like a business line.
Right.
You get to control it and run it and make decisions accordingly. It's your reputation on the line. And more importantly, if you make money from it, you can keep that.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's still theirs in ownership wise, which is great. So to date, I've made maybe $500.
Okay.
And this has been through a couple things. I did a speaking engagement at a college that I graduated from, Normandale Community College. I did that 3 years in a row. And I gave them about a 2-3 hour workshop. First hour was a lecture. Second hour, we did a job interview practice, mock interviews, and we literally rotated and got chances to try that multiple times. It was a really fun workshop I've done now 3 times for them. And then I also got an affiliate commission from Happen to Your Career. I had him on my show twice, and then he gave me an affiliate link to one of his courses, and his affiliate program worked well enough that 6 months after that cookie was placed, somebody signed up.
Okay.
And so I just one day got $100 in PayPal from Happen to Your Career.
Right.
And I was like, what happened here? I forgot. That was a long time ago.
Right.
So, earlier we were talking about listens in the first 45 days. That's a metric that advertisers care about when they're going to place an ad buy. But I've kind of come to the conclusion in my 3 years that you can't forget about long tail, and that's those older archive episodes. They're still getting listens, just not in that amount that those first 45 days have. So we, with an archive of 300 episodes, might be getting almost 1 million listens a month for the whole catalog.
Right.
People are searching, I need resume advice, and so they have to go to an episode 2 years ago for that title, to match to resume in Google, right?
Yeah, and that's how when I came upon your site long before we decided to do this, I was like, okay, job interview. Let me look at that. Let me listen to that one. Okay, resume writing, cover letter, networking and getting in the door and talking to people on LinkedIn or whatever it was. So yeah, I totally hop around. I don't care about the most recent one. I care about what the subject is.
Right. And so you had asked about Patreon. I have tried to do that. I'm unsuccessful at it still, though.
A lot of people are.
Zero patrons.
Yeah.
I have 0 patrons, so I don't know if I'm failing at it or what. I think, so there's 2 main things. I haven't recorded a video to put in the beginning of Patreon.
Okay.
And I feel that drives engagement, and it probably drives their internal hope to get people to your Patreon page. When people go in and start searching, I bet you if you have a video, they kind of help you rank higher or something.
Right.
Unless they search accurately for Career Cloud Radio. And then also, I used to work in a nonprofit for my day job. And one of the lessons I took away from their fundraising model was you have to ask, and you have to keep asking, and you need to keep asking. It was PBS, the whole nation of PBS affiliates, Arizona, Boston, everyone was asking Minnesota for the last 10 years, how did you guys get $500,000 a year from monthly fundraising? It's called a sustainer membership, right? Where they pay $5 a month recurring rather than $60 a year. Because every station wants that too. It's a lot easier to make business decisions if you can count on a monthly income, right? And my bosses, bless their souls, they would speak nationwide, but in about this topic and strategies. But internally, we kind of laughed because they're like, Justin, I'm pretty sure after speaking nationally about this, the solution is we've just been asking 10 years longer than everyone else.
Yeah, that's probably very true.
four times a year, every message on the website,
right.
everywhere they
There's
look.
some NPR
like
stations that do it all day long for one day, and I just have to turn it off because I'm like, dude, leave me alone. I already gave. But let me ask you this: 1 million downloads a month? I mean, if you have that kind of reach, aren't you doing ads at the beginning? Are you doing ads?
But again, I'm not looking at actual accurate analytics on that.
Right.
That's long tail, 300 episodes here and there. And I probably misstated the time there. It's probably not a month, but like 1 million a year or ever.
Maybe
But again, I'm going back to those Hipcast numbers that are just like too big to believe.
Yeah. But you are doing ads at the beginning? I thought I heard ads at the beginning.
So what I've been doing is, because I want to eventually be able to do ads. So what I'm doing is reading an ad for the company I work for, Be the Match. So that's another nonprofit. We save lives through cellular therapies. And then I have promoted a resume writer that's helping me out with some kind of business operations stuff for the podcast. So I promote her to try to get her some clients, kind of like a partnership collaboration there. And so those sound like ads, though, when I read them.
Right.
And I've got a couple more that I've worked on. Well, Patreon sounds like an ad too. So I have put in about 4 episodes, this ad for Patreon, but it's my personal Patreon, so I'm like advertising myself.
Right. Very cool. So I'm just going to throw this out at you, and then we should do advice. I have been thinking about doing a conference here in Atlanta. I know that there's a podcast movement conference for podcasters in Texas. There's one in Orlando, but I don't want to fly to them, and I definitely don't want to pay $500 for a weekend and stay in a hotel for another $500, $800. I'd love to just have something here and go downtown and check it out for a day or something and see some of the speakers, take some of the classes, all that kind of stuff. And I found out that Podcast Movement, who does it, it's the biggest one in Texas. They did a Kickstarter to come up with the money to pay for it. They didn't pay for it their own money. There were 3 or 4 people, and they did a Kickstarter, and they started a conference. So, and I think your site and your podcast is on the level of listeners that eventually someone would ask you to like talk at a conference. Has anyone asked you to do that, or?
Not yet for, since you, remember, I when I'm asked to speak, it's more on topic or on brand to career advice and job interview practice, because that's my niche or passion. It's not, so this gets back, actually this just ends up transitioning into advice anyway. Because what's going on in my mind that I'm trying to get out is we have to be explicitly clear about what is doing what for you, right? So the podcast for me helps me in my professional career, and but you could say that purpose is specific to opening doors for me,
right,
and getting me conversations that I would not normally otherwise get,
right.
And so like when I send a LinkedIn message inviting a Salesforce expert from another state onto a call, Salesforce is a bad example because we all are very connected to each other, but in a different industry, I imagine how that's going to go is a lot better when it's like, hey, let's do a podcast episode. People respond a lot differently than, hey, do you have any jobs for me in New York? Like, nobody wants that, right? And so then you got to move into the next purpose. So when you get somebody on the phone, like you and I right now, this is the moment that we start forming our relationship.
Right.
So this is the purpose, to meet you, you meet me. It just happens to be that we're recording it. That's the only thing we've added to this relationship.
Yeah, it's a live recording.
A little weird, but I'm fine with it. And then it's after today's call that now we have possibly next steps. But like, I might reach out to you a year from now, and then that relationship builds.
Yes.
I might reach out to you 6 months from you with a collaboration idea, and then that relationship builds. I'm currently building a product right now for job interview prep, peer-to-peer platform. When I have that ready to launch, maybe I try to leverage this relationship to do something with that.
I get that, yeah.
Yeah, but right now, we got to remember what's the purpose now,
Right.
just to finish the episode,
Yeah.
to form this relationship. The door has already been opened, so that doesn't matter anymore. You know, like,
Right.
and so I went off on a tangent there, but it's been a philosophy I've had for a while as I talk to a lot of people who are getting very confused about which stage they're at. And these are job seekers I'm thinking of.
Right.
They'll show you this resume online, like on a Facebook group or something, and say, I need help with this. And I'll read it and I'll be like, no, actually, your resume looks fine. You're probably having trouble in the interview, aren't you? Well, yeah, I haven't gotten any jobs yet. I thought it was a problem with my resume. He's like, well, no, you showed up for the interview. The resume did its job.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And likewise, I saw another post recently in the Salesforce community that she got recently certified, and she saw 71 LinkedIn. LinkedIn shows you these metrics where it's like 71 people have viewed your profile this week.
Yeah.
And she was bummed because she's like, nobody reached out to me. And it's like, well, no, you got the purpose confused there. The certification did exactly what it was supposed to do.
Right.
It got you 71 views.
But let me ask you this question. So, in my research before I started the podcast and when I was looking for jobs and listening to your podcast, but also several other career type podcasts, there was one woman on there and they said, which I agree with, like resumes aren't going to do you anything. It's all about networking, who you know, and a lot of these people who I talk to in the film and television industry don't even make a resume. It's all like, hey, do you want to come work on this project? And it comes from reputation and years of showing up and doing great work and staying late. So what she said is that you're better off going on LinkedIn and finding a person that you know and finding a connection at that company and saying, hey, do you know the hiring manager? Do you know the manager who's hiring
Yes.
for the video editors or anything like that? Because you can send out your resume all day long, which I still do as a backup. But also this podcast, I could sit in my house and watch television and not do a podcast, or I could talk to 25 people that I know and 25 people that I don't about careers in my industry, which is making connections that you're talking about.
Yes.
So two things have happened. One, there was an art director who's working on the new Christopher Nolan movie Tenet, and he's a very talented guy, but he also makes feature films. And he makes short films, but he wants to make a feature. And I've interviewed this other director who's made 4 features and literally got a feature greenlit by offering to give Oscar tickets to a guy at a dinner. He wasn't going to pay for the movie. And they're like, well, would you like to go to the Oscars? Yes. This guy, Tony Shalhoub, the actor, had tickets to the Oscars. He gave him 2 tickets to the Oscars, and they raised however much money for the film. So I put those 2 guys together, and now they're going to collaborate and talk and maybe help this guy get his feature film off the ground, because he's gotten 4 feature films off the ground. And then the other thing that happened, which isn't a big deal, but it totally makes sense, is I was talking to this woman from England, from the UK, 2 days ago, and she was talking about, she has a career type podcast in England, and she said, I want to have you as a guest on my show sometime. I'll let you know. So you can come and talk about what you do and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, everything that you do, whether it's a podcast or talking to someone on LinkedIn that's a friend at the company where you want to work, even though there's not a job there. 14 years ago, I went to Turner and did an interview and they weren't hiring. You know what I mean? I said, can I just come in and meet you? Stuff like that is the only way you're going to get into the company that you want. And I've heard several stories, without boring everybody, about people who got into Adult Swim by just saying, all I want to do is work here and nowhere else. And please just let me be an intern. I'm 30 years old.
I sat next to a woman on an airplane. This is one of those single-serve friendships where I don't have her phone number, I don't have her name or email. I could never find her for you.
Yep.
I'm sorry. But I talked to her for a 2-hour flight, and she is the executive assistant to an executive at Pixar.
Yeah.
And it's similar to the story you're talking about. Like, how did she get into that industry and work in film now as the right-hand person to an executive? Almost completely by accident. So what I would add to that, because that guest that you're referring to was absolutely right, and I think you kind of landed that point really well. But I want to add to it.
Sure.
Put a little emphasis on something. In talking with job seekers, there's a dilemma. We've got a subset that are doing just fine. They're charismatic, they're extroverted, they don't mind talking to strangers. There is another subset that is struggling. And I'm worried about the job market coming out of this pandemic, that it won't work for those people.
Yes.
It'll only work for those extroverts. And so the extroverts come back to the job market sooner than the other group. And so that's why I was excited to be on your show today. And the message that I wanted to make sure people had heard is that starting a podcast can be a really great, let's call it an excuse.
Yeah.
I used to work as a salesperson and lead generation person. I dialed 200 dials a day. It was my living, but I learned some important life transferable skills. And one of them was about how you set the tone of a conversation with a complete stranger in the first 10 seconds. You got to be upfront about the purpose of your call. If you don't do that, we're done. And that's why those robo-dials hurt so much every time you get one. Would you like to go on a cruise? I don't even know what the purpose of the call is yet in the first 4 seconds, but I already know it's not the purpose I want to do anything with, right?
Yeah.
But when you're calling a stranger, which most people don't even do phone calls anymore, or you're emailing them on LinkedIn or something, if you don't state in the first 2 sentences, this is what I want from you, the rest of it starts to sound disingenuous and just lead into a bait and switch, right? And so that's what's so beautiful about the podcast is you get to be intentful and clear with that opening sentence and say, I'd like to have you on my show.
Right.
And all those defenses just wash away.
Yeah.
And immediately you get to the next purpose, which we talked about earlier. Let's form a relationship.
Right.
And that is the best way to advance your career in any career.
Absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
Does that mean this other group can't just start making phone calls and meet strangers? Absolutely. That still works.
Right.
I'm just saying there's a lot of us that we need another excuse.
Yeah. You need an excuse. Well, Justin, this has been great. Totally different than what I expected. Great advice for people. Very cool meeting you, hearing your story, and let's keep in touch, man. And you know, if you have any questions for me, call me, text me, or I'll do the same. And maybe someday I'll have you at my conference in Atlanta speaking about your podcast.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. Have a great night. Thank you so much.
Too.
This was cool. Thank you. See ya.